What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with second part of What if Naruto entered HighSchool DxD with all-tailed beast power and became the ultimate harem king? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. What did you just say? Naruto asked with a dangerous tone. He was standing in front of Rias' desk, where she was looking at him warily, like he was going to jump over the wooden table and kill her if she did repeat what she just said. The peerage were also slightly on edge from Naruto's words, or more accurately how they were spoken. Each one ready to protect their king if need be. It was the late afternoon, a day after the incident with Freed and the fallen angels. Naruto had completely healed up from the injuries that he sustained last night. I said I will not allow you to save her. The church is under Raineir's siege. We can't tell how many enemies there will be, and I won't have you die for a girl you have only just met. Rias stated while putting on her most authoritative voice. But it was difficult to keep up a confident exposition with those icy blue orbs boring into her own. You think you have the right to order me? He asked, his voice still had a dangerous edge to it. No, she said, I don't have the right to, you are not an official part of my peerage. This is a request, please don't go, she said, trying to not make her words seem too pleading. It was true that she didn't have a hold over what he did, but this was for his own good. Please listen to reason. Not only is it dangerous for you, but we also run the risk of starting a war if these fallen angels are under orders from their leaders. Naruto wasn't expecting that response. That still didn't change what he had decided he was going to do, but it was nice that she truly didn't think that she controlled his life. The fact that she was telling him to stay for his own safety did bring a warmth to his heart. He did understand the severity that his decision held quite a bit of weight though. Rias-chan, I'm going to save her, nothing you say will change that. She is an innocent, yet they are holding her hostage for reasons out of her control. I am not going to just leave her to whatever those guys plan on doing with her. Naruto could guess what they wanted her for. That healing ability was the only reason they would want her that he knew of. They were probably going to extract the ability from her, or brainwash the poor girl into doing their bidding. If that happened then he wouldn't be able to forgive himself for not doing anything. I will take full responsibility, and take the blame of it all in case they wage war. You can't do that, they will kill you. She was trying her best to describe the absurdity on what he insisted on doing. There was a line between heroic and just plain foolish. If he actually went through with that, then the fallen angels would kill him in a public display to show the devils should not cross their path. I don't care, Naruto said, turning away from the red-headed beauty and walking to the door that separated them from the hallways. He put his hand on the doorknob, but looked back to all of the people. I won't turn my back from my friends. With that he left. Idiot, Rias muttered, saying such cool things won't save you. Even if he is being unreasonable, we can't just leave him. Kiba said, leaving his spot where he was leaning his back against the wall on the corner of the room. He walked over to the middle of the room. You're not seriously thinking of leaving him, are you? Even if she didn't help out he would follow her. But it would still knock his respect for the girl down a few pegs. Of course not, she almost snapped. Then she sighed to try to calm down. I just don't want to put you guys in danger as well. Why did that blonde boy have to be so infuriating? It was noble, but she was worried for him. Bucko, you can send me alone. I will make sure to keep him safe. Yuto bowed. No, that means that you will both die. And even if the fallen angels are going against orders, they'll still outnumber both of you. She said, rubbing her temples in an attempt to massage some ideas out of her head. There had to be a way to get out of this. The peerage all stayed silent, but Rias could tell from their facial expressions they all wanted to do the same thing. They all wanted to help their friend. Even Kaneko seemed set on helping out surprisingly. Rias couldn't help the smile that came to her face as she made her decision. Outside of the church footsteps could be heard echoing through the courtyard. At a slow, methodical pace. Feet cracking lightly on the pavement. Naruto walked calmly to the entrance of the church. He was going to try sneaking in but found a distortion of air around the church. It was almost unnoticeable, but he was able to find it before attempting to sneak in. The fallen angels had conjured a barrier that would alert them to anyone's presence, or that is what he thought it was. It was reminiscent of the barrier that was around Konoha, so he speculated and made a judgment from past experience. Even if he tried to go in unnoticed it would be for naught, they would know he was there. There was another reason that he was walking in such a slow gait. Calmly walking in would make the fallen angels overconfident, thinking that he was too dumb to try to at least attempt to get in discreetly. He wasn't going to prolong these fights, he was going to get in, take Asia, and get out. Simple. Some would think that he was being arrogant, thinking he could beat all of the enemies that would be waiting on his arrival, but he knew better. Raineir might have won first round, but that was hardly fair. He had no chakra that he could safely use in that fight. Now that he had a huge surge in his chakra stores, things would be different. He couldn't use any of his high-tier techniques, but he now had the strength and speed of what he had in the elemental nations when he wasn't in sage mode. Faster really, if he took into account the part devil side of him. Back when he sprinted to class shortly after being healed by Rias, he zoomed at an inhuman rate. Without the use of chakra, he was able to run at such a speed because of the benefit of being part devil and having a trained physique. If he used chakra to speed up his movements on top of that, he would likely have another huge boost in speed, power. He could safely say that he would be able to beat the fallen angels if there weren't a copious amount in the church. These beings were much more powerful than regular humans and even some of the ninjas of his old world, sure, but they lacked official training. He wasn't sure how much experience these people had, but he doubted it would matter in the long run. Naruto was able to keep up with Raineir when he didn't have chakra. Now that he did have some, it wouldn't take that much effort to beat her, along with any of her lackeys. He was shot out of his thoughts when 3 fallen angels flew down a few meters in front of where Naruto was standing. He analyzed them with a keen eye. The first he noticed was the asshole that took Asia in the first place. The man had the same outfit and that same, damn arrogant smirk. The other 2 were new to him. The first was a young-looking girl that one could describe as cute. She had her hair styled in twin short-side ponytails with a black bow on top, and had light blue eyes. Her attire consisted of a black gothic Lolita dress with white frills, a large black bow at the front, and a green jewel embedded on the collar. White thigh-high socks, and black shoes. The second was a tall, buxom woman with long, navy blue hair that slightly obscured her right eye. Her clothes were not as reserved as her companions'. Her top was similar to a trench coat in style, with a wide collar, matching miniskirt and black-heeled shoes. The trench coat top was very open, revealing an unholy amount of cleavage. The most noticeable accessory she had on was the gold necklace around her neck. They stood in front of him proudly, each looking certain of their victory against a single measly devil. That was good. They had the same attitude as Raineir, thinking they were superior to him. "We meet again, boy." Donasek addressed Naruto. "It was a huge pleasure the last time too," Naruto said dryly with a heavy undertone of sarcasm. Raineir would probably had at least a slight fear of Naruto, considering their last encounter. The barrier that they set up must not enable them to tell who was in the space. Either that, or the 3 in front of him were just foolish, not listening to Raineir's words of warning she would no doubt have about the blonde. He was leaning towards the former rather than the latter. It would be very difficult to construct a barrier so sophisticated that it could pinpoint identity or stats on the person who walked past it. "You know this guy Donasek?" the blonde girl asked in a childish tone. "Saw him once, yeah." Donasek replied with a shrug. "It doesn't matter," said the tall woman next to the smaller girl. She looked irritated. "Let's just kill him and head back." Tilda. The blonde girl pouted, "You're no fun." She turned to her fellow blonde. "I'm middled. That's Callow Warner and Donasek. We're your killers," the girl said in an excited way. Naruto had to raise an eyebrow at her way of speaking. Was she a psycho girl? Idiot. Callow Warner scowled. She then got in her fighting stance, as did her 2 partners. "Naruto, at your service," the spiky-haired shinobi said. Naruto relaxed his pose, looking as if the fact that they were going to attack him didn't bother him in the slightest. He did it in hopes to make them more irritated, which it did, predictably. Callow Warner's wings busted out of her back, and she shot forward like a bullet, sailing towards the shinobi with purpose. Naruto pulled his chakra through his muscles and dodged to the side. Callow Warner didn't expect the speed he displayed. She tried to change her direction in mid-flight towards his current location but didn't get the chance. Naruto sped to her side and grabbed her left arm. He pulled her into the concrete. With the speed she was going and the force of the pull, she couldn't right herself quickly enough to cushion the impact of her face to the ground. Her body rolled into one of the trees. A human would have died from a hit to the head like that, but she was likely just dazed. Before he could deliver a finishing strike to the busty woman, he had to jump out of the way of golden lightning bolt. He looked up to see Middle in the air with her dark angelic wings flapping lazily behind her. Her hand was coated in more of that electric-looking energy, almost like a golden Chidori. Naruto tilted his head out of the way just in time to dodge the spear of light that was going to stab into his eye. Donasek had ran towards him during him and Callow Warner's encounter, it seemed. The man had his spear in his hand, pointed directly to where Naruto's head used to be. The blonde shinobi coated his hand with his wind chakra and grabbed the spear at its halfway point. He was glad that his guess was right with how his chakra would shield him from any real damaging effects from the light of the spear. Donasek was startled when he saw the blonde boy undamaged from holding the light spear. Naruto capitalized on the fallen angel's surprise by punching the man in the gut with enough power to send the man's spit flying onto the ground. The blonde then grabbed the man's hunched-over back by his trench coat and jumped to Middle's position in the sky, dragging the man along for the ride. The blonde girl didn't know what to do. She couldn't use a light spear or her energy to kill the boy who was shooting towards her like a rocket with her superior in tow, because her attacker could just use Donasek to block. She decided to attempt to evade the boy, but she didn't take into account the boy's ability to throw. Naruto threw Donasek violently towards the blonde Lolita at a startling speed. She didn't dodge in time, and his Donasek's larger form impacted her, sending them crashing down to the floor in a heap. Naruto's ears pricked at the sound of something whistling in his direction. He twisted his body sideways and straightened his legs, spreading them wide, still around 10 meters off the ground. A brightly glowing spear shot between his legs harmlessly, the spot where his upper body had been before he twisted his body to the side. Naruto flipped a few times before landing on the ground. Callow Warner was looking at him with an angry sneer on her face. She flashed another spear into her hand and flew over to him lowly like she had before, albeit much slower this time around. Her other hand flashed during her flight with yet another spear of light coming into existence. Naruto had to wonder what the spears were actually made of. He pushed those thoughts aside when she let out an enraged cry and landed in front of him. Callow Warner slashed towards his chest, but he evaded with little effort. She quickly tried to stab him in the stomach, but he simply twisted his body to evade, much like he had the last time. Her attempts to stab and slash him increased in speed with each strike the blonde dodged and blocked because of her increasing irritation. Even though she was speeding up, it still seemed like she was wading through water to Naruto. His eyes were accustomed to faster speeds than this, and now he had his speed back up to par. It was so very easy to evade and block each and every one of her attacks. Without warning, she stabbed him in the chest with both of her weapons, or would have if he had not ducked under her strike. The blonde went into her personal bubble swiftly. With her arms still straight forward, Callow Warner was forced to try and kick the blonde, who was now up close and personal. Before she could even lift her leg, however, Naruto hit her face with a right hook, but he didn't end his advantage with just that. After the punch, he grabbed her arm and flipped her, sweeping her legs from under her as he did. She landed on her back painfully, mostly because of the force Naruto flipped her, and had her weapons taken away from her, thrown into the forested area around the two. He gave another sharp punch while she was on the floor, this one with more added force, knocking her into a dreamless sleep. He wasn't allowed to bask in his victory as he was forced to dodge another one of the damnable light spears that he was beginning to liken to annoyances. He looked to see Miltelt flying towards him at a slow pace. He then heard the winds picking up at a fair distance behind him. It was probably Donasek trying to swoop down to kill him without Naruto noticing him. He was coming in for Naruto's back. They thought that such a cheap trick would work against him? It certainly wasn't the most original plan that Naruto had seen. Then again, it wasn't very fair. Ninjas were crafty and deceptive because they had to be. These fallen angels had nothing on the people back home. Naruto kept his eyes on Middle, tricking her into thinking that he had not already noticed the man. He could see that she was trying to hold back a victorious smirk. This caused Naruto to hold back his own. Naruto counted slowly from 5 in his mind. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now, he mentally screamed. Naruto deftly rolled to the side and looked at his would-be killer. The man looked surprised at the movement. The blonde didn't give the man the time to gather his thoughts though. Naruto sent an earth-shattering roundhouse kick to the man's jaw as Donasek still sped through the air, near where Naruto had been, right over Callow Warner prone form. Donasek was sent rocketing towards a nearby tree. The tree broke when he hit it, as did the next after that. The fedora-wearing man was out for the count. There was no way the man was conscious after that. Naruto even had to give a light shake to his leg to get the numbness that was crawling into it. He looked over, almost lazily, to the blonde girl who was staring at him disbelievingly. Both Donasek and Callow Warner were her superiors, they were much better at fighting than her. Yet this boy had taken both of them out without using magic and he didn't even seem winded. Her wings flared behind her, and she began to retreat. She had to tell Raineir about this. Middle turned her head away from the blonde boy only to find another identical one right in front of her. Huh? All her thoughts went blank as the Naruto look-alike chopped her neck, knocking her out cold. She fell limply to the ground, not even stirring as her body impacted the hard floor. Naruto had planted a clone there for that reason. If he didn't knock out all three in time, then there would be someone who would try to warn Raineir that he was more dangerous than they anticipated. He would leave the clone to take them by surprise. And it worked brilliantly. He moved along to the church, knowing that the clone would carry out the task of tying up the fallen angels he had taken out. Where are those three? Raineir thought irritably. She expected them back by now. It was only one target. They should have been done in a couple of minutes at the most. Well, it didn't matter. She would start the ritual without them. Raineir looked to the girl who was tied onto the cross on a stage-like area. There was an army of exorcists in front of the stage, waiting on Raineir's commands. They all had dark bandit masks on, obscuring their features. The fallen angel walked up the steps and next to the innocent girl who began to stir. Those brilliant green irises of Asia's opened. After a few seconds of blinking, she started to look confused. "You're in the church," Raineir explained, knowing what the girl was going to ask. Asia turned her head to Raineir and her eyes widened. Raineir smirked at the reaction she got from Asia. She would admit to being a sadist. It was the darkness that she held in herself that made her fall from heaven after all. She had lived a very long life, and from her experiences, she had deduced that humans and other beings were assholes. Creatures who live only for themselves. This girl being innocent didn't really bother her. The girl would probably fall into the dark abyss that was selfishness. And if she didn't, it still didn't matter to Raineir. Raineir had worked under God as an angel, and it was boring being so pure. She needed to spice up her life, so she fell into greed. She desired power because she was just a pawn, like every other angel she worked with. That was all most people were, pawns. Except for those who ruled those pawns, and that's what she wanted. She wanted that power to rule over people, that feeling of superiority. And if she had to do these unforgivable acts to gain what she desired, then so be it. Devils and humans had done similar things constantly throughout history. So why would she waste the rest of her long life doing nothing but work under someone for no payoff at the end, other than knowing they helped beings so selfish out, nay, dedicated her life to helping them? Angels were foot soldiers to keep the general public of humans happy after all. They helped humans out for their own sense of justice, a justice that was flawed in her opinion. Though, she was biased in that aspect. "What are you doing, Raineir-san?" Asia asked, frightened. "I'm going to take that power from you." She answered simply. "Why, you're going to take my healing ability away?" Asia asked. "Yes. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Somewhere deep within you, you've always hated this power. It has caused you so many problems, no?" Raineir questioned, legitimately curious. This power had caused her pain, rejection. Why would she want to keep such a gift? And if she didn't want it, then Raineir would gladly take it from her. Asia looked unsure for a second, but then her eyes lit with determination. "It's true that I don't love the power that I was born with. But I want to help people no matter what," Asia replied. Raineir was about to ask her some more, until she realized she was asking these superficial questions of a mere child. A girl who was lifetimes behind her in experience. This girl knew nothing. Raineir didn't really mind that Asia ended up wanting it, she didn't deserve its power. She was weak, pitiful. Raineir moved forward to the girl. She was about to commence the ritual when the doors slammed open. All the occupants of the room turned to look at the newcomer, with only the two girls on the stage knowing who the man was. Asia's and Raineir's eyes widened, both showing varying emotions. Asia, with innocent adoration and hope in her eyes, and Raineir, who had a righteous fear of the blonde. Naruto walked down the stairs slowly. His eyes didn't break contact with Raineir's the entire trip down the stairs. It seems that I didn't get the message across before, Raineir. Naruto said, I warned you of trying to harm anyone from this city again. His eyes bled into crimson red. Perhaps I should teach you another lesson. Raineir started to break out in a cold sweat. Last time she had seen those eyes, she went into a very painful beatdown. The man in front of her could be extremely intimidating if he wanted to be. She gulped down her fear and put on her most genuine-looking smirk. You think you can stop me with all of my minions here? She asked, her voice not betraying her thoughts of doubt. She had a long while to brush up her acting skills. The blonde spared them a glance then looked back towards her. You and I both know that is a bluff. Your minions can do little against me. He made a gesture behind him. If you value your friends' lives you will let Asia-chan go. They were a means to an end. She shrugged, I needed them to guard the area from intruders and they failed. They're useless to me now. I dislike people like you the most. Naruto said, narrowing his red eyes, using people like puppets for your own gain. Isn't that what people strive to do? To accumulate people to do your bidding. She said, I don't want a philosophy lecture while you are holding my friend captive. If you give up now, then I will give you one more chance. Ha ha ha, are you an idiot? You are so trusting, she exclaimed. Naruto just shrugged lightly at her amused cries. I believe that there is good in everyone. Even someone like you, he said. Again, I'll ask you nicely. Please give me back Asia-chan. If you don't, then I won't be responsible for what happens to you. His eyes flashed. Raineir actually hesitated for a second. She would be forced to fight this man again if she went through with extracting the twilight healing from the blonde girl. If she handed the girl over to the boy though, all of this would have been for nothing. She lied to her superiors for this chance. That healing power would be a huge boost in her prestige when it came to power. The raven-haired girl squashed any doubt she had. There was no way she could go back to being just an insignificant piece of someone. She didn't want to be controlled for another second. Sorry, but I can't stop here. Kill the boy, she demanded to the army of people in the room. They all obeyed without protest, sprinting at Naruto with their swords raised to attack. Naruto let out a sigh, but raised his own weapon. He had a kunai in reverse grip, it was glowing green from the wind chakra he was pumping into it, and waited for the first person to attack. He had to wait no longer than a few seconds before one of the men swung his sword at Naruto. The blonde blocked with his kunai and grabbed the man's appendage. He yanked it harshly and pulled the man's shoulder from his socket. The masked exorcist let out a cry of agony that was silenced when Naruto used the man's body to block the strike of a sword from one of his brethren. Naruto flipped over the now dead man and landed behind another attacker's back. Naruto then lifted his hand that held the kunai backwards to where the man's neck was. He cut the man's throat open quickly and dodged the next strike of another man's sword. This sword was not bathed in a bright light like the other attacker's weapons. The shinobi weaved through attacks like an art form, delivering debilitating strikes with fluid, practiced motions. The exorcists were now starting to become hesitant of attacking the effective killing machine. Meanwhile on the stage, Raineir was trying to take the twilight healing ability from Asia as fast as possible. If she wanted to fight Naruto, she would need an extra edge. And what better edge is there in a fight than being able to heal yourself from almost any injury? She hoped that this would be enough, otherwise, she was going to feel the blonde's wrath with him unhindered. Naruto saw what she was trying to do and grit his teeth. Extracting that ability was sure to kill Asia. That was probably why capturing her was necessary. His guesses were proven right when he saw the life slowly fade from the girl's eyes. She was definitely still alive, but she looked slightly drained. A man tried to bring his blade down on Naruto's head from behind, but was blocked by something that was obscured in a smoke cloud that had appeared. A clone suddenly jumped out and stabbed the man in the chest. 4 more clones jumped out from the huge smoke cloud. Each went to kill their own confused targets. The original Naruto jumped high and landed down next to Raineir. The fallen angel stopped what she was doing in time to dodge a slash from Naruto's kunai. He blurred next to Raineir and kicked her with enough force that, if she hadn't have blocked, would have broken multiple ribs. Instead, the kick just caused her to plummet down to the ground with a heavily bruised arm. She flashed her wings and righted herself so she didn't crash full force into the concrete floor. She was able to slow herself down enough that she landed on her feet without it hurting too much. Naruto created a clone with the silent message of getting Asia out of there. The clone instantly began cutting the girl down from the cross. The original jumped down to where Raineir had landed. The woman saw that he was coming, so she sent her magic at him. Pink energy that resembled lightning. The lightning was too quick for Naruto to dodge while he was in midair, so he sent a thick layer of chakra to his small blade and put it in front of him, converting the blue chakra to his wind affinity, changing the visible blue to a heavy green within moments. The lighting-like energy smashed into the blade but couldn't break through the chakra, so it parted around the wind-like barrier to the sides of Naruto, seeking another target to strike. After the onslaught of lightning died down, Naruto landed on the ground. He stood meters from where Raineir was looking at him with a mixture of anger and fear. He brought up his blade and held it in front of him. Naruto then brought a huge amount of chakra to the blade and converted it to wind chakra. The small kunai soon looked to be a sword, with its length and thickness. The difference was it was glowing green and didn't seem to be tangible. This certain technique was very similar to Danzo's vacuum blade. Naruto felt bad for using a variation of that guy's technique, but it really was useful. He used the technique not knowing that Danzo had already created something like this. Naruto's was a bit different to Danzo's, however. While that bandaged asshole had to breathe his chakra out of his mouth and weave it into a sword that had great cutting power, Naruto just flooded a weapon with his chakra and molded it into a blade-like object. Since his chakra was so dense, it wasn't all that hard to just pump heaps of chakra into a kunai. It was much quicker and easier. He doubted anyone else could do it, however. Asuma did apparently have a variant similar to Naruto's, but that man was almost prodigious with his affinity. Even though Raineir was not familiar with what the blonde was now holding in his hand, she was still very cautious of it. It was to be expected, really. It was a scary-looking technique after all. Raineir steeled herself, summoning a spear of light into one of her hands and her crackling pink magic into her other. She stood her full height, ready to attack and defend at a moment's notice. Naruto crouched low, he held his wind blade in front of him. The two stared each other down for a few seconds before Naruto made his move. He pulled quite a bit of chakra into his legs and then shot at her with breakneck speeds. His body blurred and the stone at his feet exploded, sending bits of shrapnel flying behind him as his distorted form rocketed towards her. She shot her lightning towards him, but it had the same outcome as the first time. So she raised her spear to block the blonde's strike with his strange sword. What she didn't expect was for her trusty spear to slice in half. She jumped back and shot more lightning at the blonde. He jumped over the magic technique and sent a chakra-enhanced kick towards her. She tried to dodge, because of how much blocking his attack hurt before, but she couldn't get out of the way in time. She was sent towards the wall, but she opened up her wings, and again, slowed herself down enough for the force to become inconsequential. She didn't allow herself time to breathe, knowing that the blonde definitely wouldn't. Raineir spread her wings and created a spiral of electric magic to block any projectiles Naruto would send at her and called to her army of good little puppets. "Everyone, help me attack this one." She had to swallow her pride if she wanted to survive. She had to get out of there. The few exorcists that were left all ran over to the original Naruto in hopes to save their commander. Raineir quickly attempted her retreat, leaving the exorcists behind to their fate as she went sailing to the exit and dropped her electric shield so she wouldn't be seen while the boy was occupied. Her hope of escape died as she saw 5 more identical Narutos all jump in front of the only exit. She looked back to the original, and the scene froze her in place. The original's bright, glowing red eyes were looking at her with indifference. All of her henchmen were on the ground behind him, either dead or dying. He walked towards her slowly, looking eerily calm about killing all of those people. She was trapped between 5 copies of the blonde nightmare and the original, who her instincts were screaming at to run from. Yet she couldn't run, she couldn't move. Her wings stopped flapping, causing her to descend. She didn't even notice when she landed on the ground. All she could think of was the hopelessness of the situation. A clone from behind her grabbed her shoulders and pushed her to the ground, on her knees. She didn't even have enough willpower to stop him. Her eyes were glued to the sight of the frightening blonde who was walking towards her. Naruto finally stopped in front of her, He dissipated his wind sword, not needing it at the moment. He towered over her due to her kneeling and him standing at a full height in front of her, increasing how intimidating he seemed to her. His violent red eyes looked into her violet ones that were set in unbridled terror. The clone let go of her shoulders and moved away, leaving her unrestricted. Yet she didn't move. She managed to find her voice after a few seconds. "Please don't kill me," she choked out. She couldn't even bring out her acts of deception when those fierce eyes were staring at her. Her request was met with a huge amount of killing intent. Her body weighed down to the floor against her will, her eyes widening to huge proportions as she was forced to swallow the bile down in her throat. "And why should I listen to you?" he asked. "I hate killing people. It is the one thing that I truly hate with all my heart. I do it out of necessity. You forced me to kill all of these people, and you did so because of your own greed. What will make me think that you won't force me to kill again in the future? I won't, I swear." She was completely genuine there. There was no way she wanted to experience anything like this again. She was horrified at the power this man had over her. "You are a selfish, sadistic woman, Raineir. Your promises mean nothing to me, and even though you don't believe you will try something like this again, your greed will force you to orchestrate another plot like this," he stated. "Please, I'll do anything," she begged. She felt so degraded, so worthless in the eyes of this man. She was being forced to beg this man for another chance, which was so difficult when she was such a prideful woman. "I will consider it if you answer my questions, and if you answer them honestly," he said. She nodded her head without hesitation. "Were you under the orders of anyone to steal Asia's power?" She looked unsure about giving Naruto this information, but she answered him. "No, I was under no orders." She decided she didn't care that she was giving away sensitive information. She wanted to get through this alive. "I see, so this won't lead to a war since it was under no direct orders, yes?" She nodded. At that, he closed his eyes, thinking. After a couple of seconds, he opened up his eyes and Raineir was relieved to see that his eye color had transformed back into the azure blue. The blue eyes made him much less intimidating than the animal-like red eyes. "Thanks for cooperating," Naruto said, before driving his fingers into a pressure point on her body. She was unconscious before she hit the floor. He was glad that fallen angels had similar biology to humans. They shared some of the same pressure points and seemed. He grabbed her body and flung her over his shoulder. Naruto turned to see all of the destruction that befell the church. He didn't even feel overly tired. That was a good thing. Every time he used his chakra, it increased his stores more and more, his body growing accustomed to its use. He turned back to the stairs and left the church, popping the clones that were on the stairs. When Rias went to the church to help out her blonde friend, she expected to see a few things. But the same blonde that she and her peerage were going to save walking out of the church unscathed with a dangerous enemy on his shoulder, unconscious, was not one of those things. Naruto noticed them and looked confused for a second. He picked up his pace and walked in front of them. They all looked disbelievingly at him. He didn't pay any of their lack of believing of him being there though. "What are you guys doing here?" he asked, but he didn't look anywhere near as confused as them. "We came to help you," Yuto responded unsurely. "But weren't you guys against me coming here in the first place?" "We weren't just going to leave you. You're our friend," said Rias, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Wow, he was not expecting that. He hadn't really given them a reason to be protective of him, but they just kept on showing him how much they cared. It was nice. "Oh, sorry." He didn't really know what to say, but "I didn't really need help, thanks anyway." He scratched his head. He was beginning to feel uncomfortable, so he quickly changed the topic. "I got Asia-chan out safely, and I captured 3 other fallen angels other than Raineir here." Raineir admitted to capturing Asia-chan without orders of any of her superiors. She probably wanted to keep Asia's healing ability for herself. "You mean Twilight healing?" Rias asked, her eyes looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I think that might be the one. It must be very useful if Raineir was willing to go through so much in order to get it," he said. "Where is Asia now?" Rias asked. "She should be coming right about now," Naruto said, and within only moments, his clone appeared with Asia in a princess carry. Everyone other than himself recoiled in shock at the startling resemblance between Naruto and the clone. Naruto looked to the group. "Don't worry, one of my abilities is to replicate myself, you'll get used to it." He answered the unasked question. "There are 3 more fallen angels near that tree over there. I won't be able to carry everyone, so do you guys mind helping out? He didn't expect Kaneko to silently walk over to the tree that Naruto gestured to and pick up all 3 tied-up fallen angels with one of her arms. He knew she was strong, but it was weird to see such a small girl carry 3 people with ease. I'll explain everything to you guys once we get back to the clubhouse. He began to walk out of the courtyard, and the group followed him silently. And that's basically it. Everyone stared at Naruto like he grew a second head from the blonde's retelling of what went on earlier in the night. They were all back in the occult research room again. Naruto had his jacket off in the stuffy room and his dark school shirt's sleeves rolled up to his elbows, untucked as usual. Each member had all taken their respectable places. Rias sitting at the head of the room with the ornate table in front of her. Akeno who was standing next to her. Kiba at the corner of the room with his back against the wall. Kaneko on the couch and finally Naruto who was sitting on the opposite end of the couch that the cat-like girl was on. You're kidding, right? Kiba asked incredulously, his thin brows contorting in disbelief. No, why the hell would I lie about any of that? Naruto retorted. Well, you did have trouble with a single exorcist at the house when Asia was taken, so saying you were able to take on an entire army of them as well as 4 fallen angels is unbelievable. Rias pointed out, I was holding back that fight. And he caught me with a trick. So you were also holding back the first fight you had with Raineir as well? I was weakened at that stage. When Naruto noticed Rias' unimpressed face he sighed, you don't have to believe me, because it's all done now. I did it all without your help. Naruto said slightly bitterly. He didn't care that much that they all appeared later than they should have. He was able to take care of it all on his own. And besides that, he could also hide some of his abilities from them. It wasn't that he cared a lot about them knowing his abilities, but more out of habit of hiding them. Even though he flaunted his abilities to his friends back home, he still had to make sure his enemies or potential enemies wouldn't know enough to give them the upper hand. It was surprising how quick ninjas developed trust issues. It was hard not to be at least a little bitter though. Even though they had good intentions it fell flat, since they would have left Asia to her death. That kind of mentality, even with the consequences that would befall them, spat in the face of Naruto's moral code. The fact that they did turn up softened his spite, but not by much since if it wasn't for him, Asia would have died. Where are the exorcists now? Rias asked. Dead, was Naruto's unceremonious response. Everyone looked surprised but he paid it no mind. He was no stranger to death, and the exorcists had to go. He would have felt more guilt from the lives he had taken if he didn't know that each one was heavily brainwashed. Every single one of them had a characteristic dullness to their eyes, and were willing to follow Raineir's every command, each of them not hesitating in jumping to their deaths. Naruto wasn't sure how to fix one's mind. His genjutsu was sorely lacking not only for his huge chakra reserves after all. He didn't find psychology interesting enough to learn the mechanics of it all and implement it to training. That wasn't the only reason that he didn't care all that much though. It was the fact that the devils would have killed them all anyway. All of the exorcists were working under fallen angels who were doing a job that could possibly lead to war, so the devils, who all saw exorcists as enemies, would have no trouble killing the exorcists and destroying the light weapons after doing something so against the treaty the 3 factions made. If anything, he saved them from a slower death by the hands of Rias' family, or whoever would deal out the punishment. So then, why would you leave them alive? Rias asked, gesturing to the unconscious forms of the fallen angels who were tied up. He shrugged. Truthfully it was because he didn't want to get any more involved with the devil's issues than he already was, but he didn't care to explain that to the peerage. He guessed that he was already caught up in it just by capturing them, but there was something about killing all 4 of them that just cemented it. Bucko, we should kill them now. Akeno said with a sort of coldness that actually shocked Naruto slightly. He looked to her to see that she was glaring death at the fallen angels who were tied up on the floor. There was obviously something deeper than just dislike towards those 4 in particular. If they are left alive much longer they could prove to be a threat later. I would appreciate it if you didn't do that. A voice called calmly. Everyone in the room turned to the voice quickly and stood up in defensive positions. All but Naruto's eyes widened at the sight of the man. Naruto's eyes just narrowed to assess the newcomer and potential threat. And how high that potential was. Now that the man wasn't bothering to hide his presence, Naruto could feel the man's power leaking from his body, probably unintentionally. The man in front of him was dangerous. The man was quite tall, a bit taller than Naruto. He had black hair with golden bangs, and a black goatee. He had a gray kimono-like garb on as well. The man's eyes held a violet, reddish tint, while his face sported a confident half-smile on. When he saw Naruto looking at him, his smile grew just a little more. Azazel-sama, came the startled gasp of Rias. The man in question just continued to stare at Naruto, which was beginning to unsettle him. After a few more seconds of staring, he finally spoke. "Ah, Rias-chan, how have you been?" He addressed her, but his eyes were still firmly locked on Naruto. The blonde shifted his body so that it would be easy to engage in combat if Azazel came at him. "What are you doing here? This goes against the agreement that the Greyfia have with you," Rias asked heatedly. "Oh no, I cleared that all up with Searsex. I have been in Kuo for a few weeks now." He finally turned to her. "I had to see to my subordinates that they received proper punishment." "You knew about what these four were doing and you didn't even stop them?" Rias glared. Naruto turned to everyone that wasn't currently in an argument and saw that they were all content to let Rias have a verbal duke out with the odd man who had just randomly appeared. Maybe they weren't arguing because it wasn't their place to, because they weren't of high blood, or perhaps they were just dependent on Rias. He wasn't sure. If the man merited a sama from the sister of the leader of the underworld, then he must be either prestigious or extremely powerful. Most likely both. He could see the one that seemed the most bothered by his presence was Akano. She was glaring at him, but Naruto was sure it was for something not related to why Azazel came now specifically. In fact, she had the same expression as when she looked at Raineir and the rest of the fallen angels. "Well, I only found out the night they got taken out. By one boy no less. You followed my servants?" Rias grit her teeth. "Just one." Azazel's eyes flickered to Naruto. Naruto wasn't sure whether to bristle in anger at the man or slap himself in the face. How could he not have noticed that he was being followed? And by the way that Azazel was looking at him, he saw each of the fights, or at least gained info on what transpired. Meaning Azazel knew some of his abilities. With your lax attitude, I'm afraid that even someone of your stature won't be able to control their subordinates well enough. They have each gone against the agreement, and we both know what the punishment for that is." Rias glared balefully. Azazel chuckled in response. "That's why I've come to strike up a deal with you," he said coolly, walking over to his unconscious brethren. He tapped the unconscious Raineir on the forehead. "I am offering 3 fallen angels to you. I will take one and use him or her to show that even though I do love my people, I am not completely lenient to them if they do something as stupid as what these 4 did. Of course, you can take all 4, perhaps we could leave it at a public beating. Having 4 servants who each have the capabilities to wield light weapons is a huge boon in the upcoming raiding games after all." He pointed out, "I am confident in my peerage, I don't need any of your fallen angels, especially if it is just to silence what happened." Rias shot back, "I wasn't going to ask you to keep what happened between us at all. They're just compensation, they caused you quite a bit of trouble after all. And we both know that you need the extra help," he said with a smirk. Rias glared again. At this point Naruto was at a loss. Why would she need more servants? He thought that they were just used for small jobs, but maybe there was something deeper going on here. "You said that you only followed one of my servants, so why do you know that much?" Rias grit out. "I keep up to date on everything, Rias, remember that." He smirked and tapped his head with his index finger. "What I am offering is valuable. I know there is only one way for you to truly decline Riser, and you know what it is as well." He turned away from Rias' angry face to Naruto's cautious one, and Boy Wonder won't be able to help. Naruto held back a growl from the irritating nickname that was obviously directed at him. Rias looked like she was about to speak, then she closed her mouth and processed the information. After almost a full minute of tense silence, Rias sent an apologetic look to Akano. "Give me some time to think about it. You have to answer tonight, Rias, I'm a busy man," Azazel said. "Somehow I doubt that," Rias commented dryly. Azazel laughed at her reply but still responded. "Either way, you still have to tell me tonight," he said casually. Another silence dragged out before Rias sighed in defeat. She gave Akano another look before responding. She sighed again, "I accept." "Great." The man suddenly walked towards Naruto and put his hand into a pocket inside his kimono. The blonde prepared for a weapon to appear, Instead there was a piece of paper that was in his hand as Azazel stretched his arm out to Naruto. "Hey Blondie, nice work with the bottom feeders. Come to this room soon, we have a lot to discuss. While you're there we should have a drink, nay?" Naruto nodded unsurely, not hiding his twitching eye at yet another nickname, especially since the man in front of him was more or less blonde himself, and took the card from his hand. "It's been a wonderful reunion, Rias-chan, I'll be seeing you soon." A golden light shined through the room originating at the man's feet, forming into a pentagram. With a salute, the strange individual disappeared from view. There was a moment of silence that hung in the air for a second before being broken. "Who the hell was that?" Naruto asked incredulously. "Azazel, the former Governor-General of the Fallen Angels," Rias stated with a glare set in place where the man made his exit. Taking in the information, Naruto turned the piece of paper Azazel gave to him and his brow furrowed when he saw the number 305 staring back at him. Was that guy in the same hotel he was staying in? If he was, then the man likely had something to do with his living arrangements. The ninja scowled as he crumpled it up. There were too many mysteries popping up in one night. First, the vague conversation that Fallen Angel guy had with Rias, Akino's reaction to the man and his subordinates, and finally the man giving him the room number, which also had to mean something. It was all starting to make his already exhausted mind whirl like a spinning top. "I've had enough, I'm gonna go get some rest. It's been a hell of a long day," Naruto said as he grabbed Asia and put her on his back. She adjusted herself in her sleep with a cute snore. "I'll take Asia-chan with me back to my place where she'll be safe." Afterwards he had something else he wanted to do. "Wait, Naruto-kun." The blonde turned and she saw the curiousness in the large, blue stratospheres that were his eyes. "I don't like the way Azazel-sama looked at you. He's a dangerous man. Just, be careful, okay?" "Yeah, sure thing," he said with one of his usual grins, albeit a little dimmed than what it usually was. He looked troubled, she realized. She felt even more distant than usual with the enigmatic teenager. Before she knew it he was gone, leaving her blinking at his quick departure. She quickly turned to the still remaining members of the room. "You guys go get some rest as well. I'll need all of you prepared for tomorrow in case any of our guests try to make a quick escape." "Hi, bucko," they said in unison, leaving without another word. Rias looked to Akino's back in concern, but the Lightning Queen didn't turn back. When the doors finally closed towards their retreating backs, Rias put her face in her hands with a heavy sigh. "Forgive me, Akino." Naruto looked uneasily at the door in front of him, his back now unhindered by Asia's weight, with her safely resting in his room. His knuckles hovered in front of the heavy wooden door in front of him. Next to the door read the room number. 305. Another second of hesitation passed before he gave 3 solid knocks, keeping his hands from instinctively going into his pockets in case he had to fight the guy on the other side. His body tensed when he heard the door give a click sound from the other side, followed by the door sliding open to reveal the man that had Naruto's alarm bells ringing in his brain, making his body again shift into a more ready position. Azazel was still in the same kimono from the minutes earlier, but he now had a glass of scotch that he was swishing in his hand, that same confident half-smile still in place. "Took you less time than I was expecting." He opened the door some more. "I got more glasses inside if you'd like, always better to share a drink than drink alone." Azazel laughed. Naruto crossed his arms. "Sorry, I was taught never to go into hotel rooms with strangers. Especially creepy older guys," Naruto said. Azazel unexpectedly let out a boisterous laugh and clapped Naruto on the back before the blonde could even react, making him stumble inside the room against his will. "I like you, kid," he yelled with a drunken swish of his glass, not even acknowledging the boy's pained wheeze. Azazel walked around him into a large kitchen that had an indescribable number of liquor bottles, all of varying sizes. He pulled one of the many bottles and inspected it for a second before grabbing out a glass for his new guest, who was still giving out a few coughs of discomfort from his aching back. Damn, this guy hit hard. What was it with people not knowing their own strength in this world? How does a 1965 Glenfiddich bottle of whiskey scotch sound? "I paid 3 million yen for this baby. One of the only bottles in the world, you know?" the man asked as he opened the bottle and poured the expensive liquid into both glasses, making sure to ration it out. He walked over to Naruto and handed him a glass. Naruto finally straightened his form and took the glass out of his hand, put off by the man's easygoing personality. He thought this would be a meeting with a lot more tension. He inspected both the glass and the substance contained within thoroughly. Azazel grinned. I'm not one for poison or fighting really. I'm more of a talker, he stated as he moved to sit down on one of the couches in the middle of the room. Once he was comfortable, he took a sip of his glass and smacked his lips together in satisfaction. Worth the 50 years of waiting, Azazel exclaimed with a content smile. He looked to the boy. Sit. I'll stand, Naruto replied with a deadpan stare, setting the glass down on a table. Suit yourself, Azazel said easily. I'm guessing you're wondering why I asked for this little meeting, he said, getting a stiff nod from the still cautious boy. Well, I just wanted to commend you on your performance tonight. Naruto's jaw flexed. I have to say, you're even more interesting than I thought you would be when I found you on that park floor a few weeks ago. Azazel smiled, taking another sip of the priceless liquor. A shinobi warrior from another dimension. Sounds like the theme of a cheesy movie, honestly. He laughed. How do you know all that? I think you are underestimating how popular you are. The shinobi narrowed his eyes at Azazel's statement. I thought only the Greyfia family knew anything about me, Naruto stated. He saw the man's grin widen. Then you're dumber than you look, kid. The man chuckled. He got a dangerous growl in reply. You didn't think one of the Satans of the underworld would keep such a thing to himself and his family, did you? All of the Satans know of you. Though, the 4 Satans want to keep your presence on the down low, so your anonymity is more or less safe for now. Deciding the man in front of him really wasn't going to attack, Naruto slid his hands into his pockets, but still kept his distance. How many people know about me? Naruto asked with a grimace. Azazel looked at his hand as he counted with his fingers. 6 pillar families of the remaining 33 existing, not including the 4 Satans themselves. Azazel shrugged. That's only the figureheads of each house. Though, if you do anything else similar to what you did tonight, people are going to start asking questions. And you don't want that, do you? No, he really didn't. Getting caught up in all of these politics was already grating on his nerves. Having a larger scope on him than he already had was the antithesis of his desire. If he was lucky, he would become a bargaining chip for a strong family that caught him first, at worst, a guinea pig for experimentation. Either way, not a great outcome. That being said, he wouldn't go down without a fight, but if more devils had even half the power the man in front of him seemed to have waving off of him, it would be difficult to fight them off if their numbers were great enough. As soon as he had his power fully restored, which would take no longer than a week, he would be glad for a fight though. Sizing the governor in front of him up, he decided he'd be able to put up a good fight against him, if not beat him outright. He doubted Azazel had any particularly tricky magic with all the power he unconsciously put out, while Naruto could just use his more diverse jutsu against him. Though, Naruto hadn't seen much magic being used at all, so he decided he wouldn't judge based on speculation. You're the one who is paying for my stay here, aren't you? Naruto ventured. If what he said before was true about Azazel was the one who first found Naruto, which would make him the most likely candidate. That's correct. Azazel nodded, leaning his back deeper into his comfortable-looking couch. I hope you like the living arrangements. The grinning man said, pouring himself another glass. I asked you to go to school so you could meet with Rias-chan. I knew it wouldn't take long for that girl to find you. Why would you want me to meet up with her? Naruto asked, curious despite himself. Why? Protection, of course. The Greyfia family is one of the strongest families in the underworld, and you'll need some protecting. You're quite the VIP here, kid. You're lucky I'm the one that found you. There are a lot of dangerous people here after all. He whispered conspiratorially, before bursting out in boisterous laughter. Naruto's sweat dropped, not knowing if the man was drunk or just weird. Nothing I can't handle. Naruto shrugged, picking up the glass off the table again. After another glance, he threw it back, not seeing any abnormalities with it. His face scrunched up at the smoky taste that assaulted his mouth. That's the spirit. Azazel cheered in approval, grabbing the bottle and pouring his new friend another drink, which Naruto reluctantly accepted. Now that we got all that out of the way, how about we talk about something else? Azazel suddenly leaned his head forward with his grin in place. How do you like S? Azazel asked. Naruto blinked. That wasn't what he was expecting. They're awesome. Why? The multicolored haired man shook his head. No, you can't just leave it at that. Azazel clicked his tongue in disapproval, wagging his finger. What are your preferences? Bigger? Smaller? Dark S, or pink? Do you prefer squeezing them or sucking them? Do you like how they bounce or how they jiggle? The man listed off. Naruto tilted his head, looking at him disbelievingly. How did the conversation turn into this so quickly? Regardless of how it did, the man was still waiting on his answer. Big. Naruto responded, brow furrowing in concern for the man's mentality. Azazel stroked his goatee, contemplating. We have similar tastes it seems. Though next time you should be a bit more descriptive. Azazel smirked, raising his glass to Naruto's. We'll get along just fine. Naruto clinked his glass against Azazel's, finally letting out a laugh at the absurdity the night turned out to be. Weirdly enough, the guy reminded Naruto of Ero Sennin, from the drinking and mannerisms to the obsession of tits. In another life they would have gotten along frighteningly well. Another question. Is it boob-related? Naruto asked, throwing back another glass, grimacing in disgust as the strong drink touched his tongue. The man smiled. You catch on quick, he said, pouring Naruto another glass. Naruto looked at the newly refilled glass and then at the grinning man. This was going to be a long night. Brilliant, bright green eyes opened slowly, refracting the light from the white ceiling above her. Asia let out a cute yawn and closed her eyes again, not willing to get up yet. Getting comfortable again, she attempted to sleep but her attention was immediately drawn to light snoring coming from next to her. She opened her eyes and turned over to inspect who the noise was coming from. Her eyes widened when she saw a shirtless Naruto, lying right next to her with his eyes closed, blissfully unaware of his surroundings. She turned a brilliant shade of red as she kept looking at him, then down at his shirtless form. She felt as if steam were shooting out of her ears as she realized what she was doing. Almost as if he sensed her watching him in his sleep, he yawned and opened his eyes, making her squeak in surprise. He sat up and stretched his arms, popping his back in a few places and finally bringing his hand to his head, already feeling the night of drinking take its toll. Naruto turned his bloodshot eyes over to the tomato-faced girl currently staring at him. Good morning, he grimaced, running a hair through his messier-than-usual hair. How ya feeling? Fine, she stammered, doing her best not to look him in the eyes. Naruto-san, did you perhaps save me last night? She asked, making sure it wasn't all just a crazy dream. Yeah, Naruto responded half-heartedly, ripping the sheets off of him and jumping off the bed. He grabbed a loose-fitting red singlet from the ground. You were in trouble so I came and helped out, he said tiredly, tugging the newly acquired clothing on. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She looked to her savior, her eyes shining with awe, even as he scratched his ass and yawned. Naruto-kun was so amazing. Hey Asia-chan, you sure you're feeling alright? You're all red, Naruto said, pointing to her face. I'm fine, she said embarrassedly, trying to hide her face from the fellow blonde, who had his head tilted to the side. Okay, if you say so. He shrugged, come out whenever, he said, throwing her a plain white t-shirt and some baggy gray sweatpants. First you might want to chuck on something to wear. Asia looked at him, confused, then looked down at herself. She felt her cheeks burn even hotter when she found that her once modest nun outfit was almost completely shredded, leaving her white bra exposed. Your clothes got dirty and shredded up from last night, Naruto explained, not noticing her emotional predicament, instead looking at the clock on the bedside table. He cursed, crap, late again. Get dressed quick, Asia-chan. I gotta get to the club, and you have to come with, he said as he searched quickly for a uniform he could wear. Not finding one that wasn't ruined from his last few battles, he grabbed a dark zip-up hoodie and some jeans, deciding that school conduct could suck it. He ducked out of the room. See you out the door, he said, leaving the more than a little embarrassed girl to her privacy. Naruto brought his hand over his face to shade his eyes from the overbearing sun as he speed-walked to the school grounds, wishing he brought some glasses. Asia followed him timidly, having a difficult time keeping up because she had to stop every few seconds to pull up the large pants around her waist. He turned around and smiled sheepishly. Sorry, I don't have anything your size, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. No, it's no problem, Naruto-kun, Asia assured. She poked her fingers together. Naruto-kun. If you don't mind me asking, where are we going? My school, to that big-ass building over there. Naruto pointed to the bright educational behemoth that sat a block ahead. I have to get back to Rias to deal with the assholes that captured you before, and I want you to be with me. You want me to be with you? Asia asked. She felt her rosy cheeks stretch into a shy smile. Really? Yeah, I couldn't protect you before, but I'll make sure nothing will happen to you again, okay? Asia felt lightness in her chest and she brought a hand to her heart. She felt weird, but happy. She didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. They walked through the large metal gates. She couldn't help but notice all the stares that were sent their way, curious eyes all looking at her. She walked a little closer to Naruto and held onto the fabric of his jacket, not used to all the attention. Naruto just ignored it. The blonde shinobi navigated them both through the school courtyard to a much older-looking building. He opened the door and stepped inside, Asia still holding onto his clothes. Eventually they reached a door that Naruto stopped at. He gave a solid knock and cracked it open, finding Rias, Kiba and Kaneko sitting in the room, Akano surprisingly absent. Naruto's eyes narrowed when he found all of the fallen angels' eyes turned to him. He stepped in front of Asia protectively and kept his eyes on them all as he walked further into the room. Hey, you're the kid from earlier. Ironically, this came from the young-looking Lolita who he beat last night. You impertinent, blonde bastard. This lovely comment came from the glaring Donasek. Pray I don't get out of these damned restraints, boy. He spat contemptuously. Be quiet, both of you. Raineir hissed, surprising the two and subsequently Naruto. He focused on her and noted the bead of sweat that trailed down her face. He couldn't hold back a gratifying smirk. Wait, Raineir, why would you want us to be quiet? Aren't you mad at that damnable teen? Callow Warner asked, unwilling to act amenable to her superior's uncharacteristic demand. I said silence. Raineir responded harshly, making Callow Warner recoil. Do not question my orders. She had seen what the boy was capable of, and his superior combat prowess, even with the sizable age difference. Her subordinates apparently had not learnt their lesson. She wasn't going to fall with them if they were too foolish to realize their plight. Hey, thanks Raineir. You might not be as bad as I thought. Naruto exclaimed, giving her a patronizing pat on the head. Raineir's eye twitched. How dare why? Donasek started. It's Donasek, yeah? Sorry, I left you out. He moved his hand to pat the man on the head, which was not currently sporting his fedora. The man growled out something incomprehensible and tried to bite one of the blonde's fingers off. The boy drew back his hand too quickly, however, much to the man's dismay. Yeesh, would it kill you to take a shower? Your hair's seriously greasy without that hat on. Naruto said, wiping off his hand on his pants. Middle let out a snort of laughter, as did Kiba from the other side of the room. You insufferable helmet. A hell what? Naruto asked, perplexed by the new word. As entertaining as this is, could you please stop messing around with the fallen angels, Naruto-kun? Rias asked, giggling into her hand. His smile dropped a tiny bit when he heard her voice. Yeah, they're all yours. He nodded, lacking all previous enthusiasm. Rias frowned. Yes? Good. Well, Rias looked at the group still tied to the ground. You're probably wondering why we haven't killed you all yet. I thought it obvious, actually. The Greyfia family is rather weak, after all. Raineir snarled, showing her contempt quite clearly. Rias ignored the comment. Your master has so kindly given you a chance of redemption, even though you have broken multiple laws of the treaty instated by the three factions. You will all be allowed to live, under one condition. That you serve me as members of my peerage. Bow? To you? Donasek laughed at the thought. I will not bow to the whims of a mere child. Then you will be hung. She retorted flatly. She let the comment sit in their minds. I would suggest you not anger me, because as of right now, your lives are in my hands. Listen, girl, Raineir spat, you are 100 years too early to be demanding anything from us. Regardless, you will answer to me, or you will be executed. Rias responded seriously, silencing the fallen angel. Raineir swallowed. The others were also noticeably uncomfortable. What would you have us do under your authority? Raineir asked. She looked nauseated just saying it. Rias smiled. This sucks. Middle whined after handing out yet another flyer. The first chance I get I'll kill that girl. And the blonde kid as well. Callow Warner said, doing her best to ignore the ever-growing groups of ogling guys. Middle pouted. At least you have admirers. Why can't I have any crowding men? Maybe because you look like a middle schooler. Callow Warner replied flippantly, besides, why would you want a bunch of buffoons drooling over you? Maybe because you've already gotten rid of most of these damn flyers. Middle cried, tears comically streaming down her face. You don't even have to try. She accused. She replied, shutting the girl's whining out of her head. Meanie. The girl pouted. I wonder if Dawn and Ray-chan are doing any better. Burn them faster. Raineir said from a branch she was sitting on, reading. You could help, woman. Donasek yelled, dark electricity streaming from his fingers. There's over 1,000 of these things, and it's definitely not normal paper. He had to spend at least 10 seconds of constant destructive energy on a single piece before it burst. He had around 800 to go. I could. She agreed, before flipping another page in her book. Bitch. I gotta say Rias, that was hilarious. Naruto laughed, seriously. The looks on their faces when they got their first assignment was priceless. He may not have held her in the highest regard at the moment, but he had to give credit where credit was due. It was funny. Kaneko agreed monotonously, one of her rare smiles resting on her face. Even though she was cautious of Naruto after him admitting he used natural chakra, she couldn't help but gravitate towards the boy's sanguine personality. I'm glad you both think so. Rias smiled, though. Naruto, could you tell me why you're on the roof? The boy in question grinned. Just stretching my chakra muscles a little bit, ya know? He responded, sitting cross-legged on the room's ceiling. Asia hadn't stopped staring at him, performing a seemingly impossible task, mouth wide open in befuddlement. Rias shook her head. The boy never ceased to surprise her. Of course he would have yet another ability that she had never seen before. She looked at the slack-jawed Asia. Oh, how rude of me. I was so caught up in business I forgot to introduce myself. We have never been properly acquainted, have we, Asia-chan? I am Rias Gremory. Asia came back to reality with a start and looked to the angelic voice greeting her. Oh, yes. It's very nice to meet you, Rias-san. She bowed low. Rias waved the girl off. No need for formalities, Asia-chan. Rias walked over to Asia and cupped the startled girl's face with her hand. I must apologize, Asia-chan. If it weren't for Naruto, we may have ended up leaving you to the fallen angels. To make up for that, I will do whatever you ask of me, as well as my full ability to protect you. From now on, think of this club and I as your family. Rias said, caressing the girl's cheek with her thumb. Asia's eyes went wide. She'd never had a family before. All she could do was nod as she looked at her newest role model in the face. There's no need to apologize, Rias-san. I'm sure you did the best you could. Asia replied earnestly, despite the timidness in her voice. Rias' radiant smile widened. You're such a good girl. Naruto dropped from the ceiling and landed next to the girls. Hope I'm not interrupting anything, but you still haven't introduced the rest of the club. Naruto pointed out. Oh, of course. Rias said sheepishly, that's Kiba-kun, and that's Kaneko-chan over there. It's a pleasure, Kiba said with a princely smile, sharpening one of his blades. Kaneko nodded to her, not pausing in snacking on one of the many sweets on the coffee table. It's nice to meet you both. Asia bowed. Now, let's get you out of those ugly clothes. Rias suggested, eliciting an indignant, hey, from Naruto. She ignored it. I may have a uniform in the other room. Asia nodded. They both left the room, leaving the rest of the club. A silence reigned within the room for a second, which felt weirdly awkward, even though there was no noticeably uncomfortable atmosphere. Naruto didn't understand why. It quickly dawned on him that it was due to the fact that he couldn't recall saying much of anything to the two that sat in the room with him, none in Kaneko's case. Naruto stretched a little before dropping roughly on the couch opposite of Kaneko. It really didn't take a lot for them to give in, Naruto remarked, throwing his hands to the back of his head and leaning back. He looked specifically at Kaneko as he said it, causing the usually emotionless girl to squirm lightly in discomfort. She gave a tight nod. Naruto frowned, puzzled. You know, we haven't really talked before, Kaneko-chan. Yes. Naruto's sweat dropped at the concise answer. Do you like being a rook for Rias? Yes. She replied again with a nod. You a fan of music? A silent nod was his answer. He ran a hand down his face. You're not great at this whole conversation thing, huh? You'll have to forgive Kaneko-chan here. Kiba stepped into view, putting a hand on the cute girl's head. She's not very talkative, you see. He laughed. Yeah, I can see that. Naruto said, picking out his ear with his pinky finger. Well, what about you? What about me? You're a ninja, right? No offense, but you don't really seem like the ninja type. Kiba laughed. What's a ninja supposed to be like? Naruto asked, putting his feet on the table in front of them. Kaneko grabbed the plate of snacks resting on the table and held it close to her protectively. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Sorry. I'm not sure. Silent. Wears all black and stalks the night, ready to assassinate people at the drop of a hat. You know, that kind of stuff. Naruto's face scrunched. That's the Anbu type stuff. I'll stick to orange, thank you very much. Naruto scratched his cheek and looked up in thought. I'm not really the stealthy sort of ninja. I'm more of the kick-ass, front-of-the-line type. I wasn't aware that there was that kind of ninja. Kiba remarked. Naruto grinned. Of course there is. All the big-name shinobi are the powerhouses. Naruto pointed both of his thumbs to his chest proudly, and you're looking at one of the most revered, badass names in the history of the elemental nations. The hero of Konoha, at your service. What? He was allowed to gloat. He earned that title, damn it, and hell if he wasn't going to use it every chance he got. Kiba chuckled in amusement. Oh? And how did you win that title? Kiba asked. Saved the village from some dude people claimed was a god, no biggie. The way he said it made it seem like it was in fact quite a biggie. The bastard was tough as anything, though. Second toughest guy I've ever fought. You're just full of stories, aren't you? True stories. Why did no one ever believe him? I believe you. Naruto blinked. Seriously? Yes, Kiba said seriously with a nod. I had my doubts about your little tale last night, but after seeing how that Raineir woman reacted to you, I trust your word. Besides, you seem like the truthful type. Even if your stories are a bit out there. Huh, cool. Naruto leaned back again with a grin. My stories are so out there because I'm so badass, dat bayo. Dat huh? Never mind. Another silence fell upon the room, a much more comfortable one. Naruto looked to the roof and sighed, not an exasperated one like he had started doing since coming to this strange new world, but a peaceful one. Even if he couldn't get back home now, he would get there for sure. And while he figured out a way, he could at least stay here with some cool people. Naruto's head snapped to Kiba as he realized something. Hold up, what happened to that Issei guy? I'm telling you, my girlfriend really did turn into a big-titted babe with wings and tried to kill me. Issei screamed for what felt like the millionth time to the doctor in front of him. The man pushed up his glasses. Yes, of course. But what do you think the big-titted babe with wings represents? No, she doesn't represent anything. She almost killed me for God's sake. The doctor nodded, scribbling down something on his notepad. And how does that make you feel? Arg, wasn't that amazing, Naruto-kun? Not really. Naruto yawned, not sharing in Asia's enthusiasm. He quickly folded his arms on the desk in front of him and let his head fall into the makeshift pillow. Seriously, how could she think of economics class as amazing? Granted, this was the first class she'd ever had in her life, but surely she saw how utterly mundane it was, right? He could barely stay awake from all the useless information he was doing his best to push out of his head. He didn't exactly care about grades, after all. He looked over to Raineir's transformed body to see how the dark girl was faring. The woman who currently looked like a girl sat in the corner of the room, staring off into space. The girl's school name was Yuma. And Yuma did not look amused. For a century-year-old woman to start going to high school again, if she had even attended before, must have been boring beyond comprehension. The woman looked at him, catching his stare, and hastily looked away. He frowned. Her fear may have been amusing in a dark kind of way before, but now it was just starting to get on his nerves. He wasn't used to being feared, and he didn't want to get used to it. He was a nice guy, damn it. Why hadn't she realized that? He slammed his head into his arms again. That attitude won't do, Naruto-chan. He groaned at the familiar voice. Aika Kiryu, a second-year student at Kuo Academy in Naruto's class. The girl had brown hair, wore glasses, and was perhaps the most perverted girl in school. For some reason, she had a keen interest in Naruto's social life, and loved to tease the poor boy every chance she got. She looked at Naruto with a gleam in her chocolate brown eyes. Don't drag your innocent little sister down just because you're a good-for-nothing degenerate. He waved her off. Yeah, and like you're the role model of the year. He took his head off his arms to give her a deadpan stare. Rias had somehow admitted Asia into the school within a couple of days, under the guise of his little sister. When he asked her about it, Rias replied that it would get rid of any curiousness of why he would be so protective of the girl. Granted, he was a little more protective of the girl than what would be considered normal between friends, but that was only because of what the girl went through. He thought the redhead had just been exaggerating how much protecting she would need. These were, after all, high school students. That was until she entered the class and he saw the faces of every guy that looked at her. Now, he was not the jealous type, and he had no real feelings for the girl, but it irked him like nothing else when he thought about what they would do and how they would undoubtedly capitalize on her innocence for their own sick goals. He felt disgusted just at the thought. She had the mentality of a 9-year-old girl at Sunday school, for crying out loud. No way was he going to let anyone with motivations like that get close to her. So cruel. The bespectacled girl pouted, but Naruto-chan, aren't you worried for your sister's well-being? She's getting rather popular. Naruto looked over and saw that girls and boys alike were crowding around her, all vying for her attention. He blinked. He looked away for a second. How did she get that big of a group talking to her so quickly? Before the boy could walk over and make sure to keep an eye on her, he heard cries coming from outside the classroom, followed by a distressed call. Have you seen that Uzumaki guy? Blonde hair, weird-looking scars on his cheeks. Anyone? Naruto scratched his head at the distraught voice. He knew that voice from somewhere, but he just couldn't place it. Just then, the door burst open, revealing a stressed-looking, brunette boy. Naruto recognized his face immediately. Issei. Matsuda and Motohama cried from their place in the windows of the classroom. The boys in the best place they could get a look at Asia-sama. Where the hell have you been? We haven't seen you in like a week. Matsuda continued. Issei ignored his friends, making a beeline right for the unanimous shinobi. Naruto. Thank God. The boy practically wept. He leapt to his savior and grabbed onto his clothes, clinging to them like a leech. You believe me, don't you? Yuma-chan turned into an angel chick and tried to kill me. You were there, weren't you? You saved me, didn't you? Naruto did his best to calm the pervert down so he could get a word in and maybe stop getting jostled around. Issei, calm, Naruto said, removing the boy's tight hold on his clothes. Naruto looked around the room, seeing all eyes were on him. Issei didn't even notice. Please, Naruto-san. No, Naruto-sama. Issei got to his knees and held one of Naruto's legs in a deadlock. I'm not crazy, right? Naruto looked uncomfortable from the boy's look of utter hopelessness. No, you're not crazy. Issei jumped in joy and fist pumped to the air. Yes, finally. He stopped his impromptu celebration when he saw the girl of his dreams, nightmares, looking at him with an irritated glare. He looked taken aback before leaping over Naruto's table with an effeminate squeak, hiding behind Naruto like a protective shield. Everyone who wasn't on the ground laughing from the unexpectedly girly reaction looked at the girl that caused said reaction, without even lifting a finger. Raineir had already schooled her earlier volatile facial expression to innocent curiosity within a second. Damn, the girl was a good actor. It's her. The boy screamed painfully into Naruto's ear, making him wince. Naruto, quick. Use your crazy ninja moves on her. What ninja moves you talking about? Naruto smirked, not being able to resist. His prankster side would not allow him to leave this golden opportunity without milking it at least a little. Plus, he could get some payback for the ringing ear Issei inflicted. Issei's head swiveled to him, eyes widening in horror. Not you too. You're supposed to be the good guy here. Issei whined pitifully. Naruto bit back his laughter and looked to the poor boy, unrelenting. Come on, Issei. Are you really that scared of Yuma-chan, over there? She's harmless. He smirked at Raineir, seeing a comically large tick mark form above her temple. The boy nodded frantically without hesitation. Even though she's the devil incarnate. He pointed to the unsuspecting-looking girl. His body shook like a leaf in the wind when he saw a wicked smile crawl up her face, unseen by all of their classmates, as they had their attention on the paling boy. Yuma quickly wiped the vicious grin off of her face, and feigned innocence. Who are you again? She asked, putting a finger to her full, pink lips, her violet eyes open wide in question. Normally, Issei would have been foaming out the mouth from the level 10 cuteness the girl displayed. Instead, however, he leapt backwards to the ground with another womanly shriek. Why you truly are a dangerous enemy. Using that adorable aura like that is playing dirty. He pointed to her again, getting up and striking a heroic pose, acting as if he didn't just fall down to the ground from the words of a 16-year-old girl. Mark my words, Yuma Akuma. I'll show the world just how evil you really are, he declared boldly, before making a mad dash outside, obviously not able to take the girl's terrifying presence any longer. There was an awkward second where complete silence dominated the room, before 90% of the class burst out in laughter. The other 10% all gathered around the beautiful Yuma and crowded around the girl, asking if she was all right. They were all guys, and each tried to cop a feel, acting as if they were checking for bruises. The girl's mushy pseudo-personality cracked for a second as she gave each of them a baleful glower. Naruto himself wiped a tear from his eye after his laughing fit ended. He stood up, ignoring his hurting sides. Okay, that was fun. But I should probably go talk to the guy, he said to himself, grabbing his empty backpack. He threw all of his books out shortly after acquiring them, from the top strap and flinging it onto his right shoulder. Opening the sliding door, he stepped out and found the boy he was looking for instantly, him being right outside the door. He stared curiously as he saw a girl with glasses and a bob haircut conversing with the debauched teenager. From what he heard, most girls wouldn't walk within a 10-foot radius of the boy unless they had to, in fear of being defiled or something of the sort. After an abrupt conversation that Naruto didn't quite catch, Issei walked away with them, looking as lost as Naruto felt. The blonde shrugged his shoulders and walked away, pushing the boy out of his mind. The girl didn't seem to have ill intentions, and it wasn't Naruto's problem anyway. Sona recruited Hyodo-kun into her peerage? Rias asked incredulously. Why? I'm unsure for now, bucko. Akino's voice was tight, unlike the smooth, strangely sensual inflection it usually held. Naruto was not the only one that wasn't happy with the occult club president at this time, it seemed. Akino had also seemed distant the past few days, no doubt because of the club's recent new recruits. Rias bit her lip. Sona doesn't do anything unless it's for a reason. Rias commented airily. Perhaps Hyodo-kun has a sacred gear of some sort. Perhaps, Akino said, not seeming like she wanted to be in the room at all. Rias let out a sad sigh. Akino, you know I didn't want to accept Azazel-sama's offer, but what other choice do I have? Rias asked, a pained expression on her face. You're the only person I trust with the information. You know that I may very well need to protect myself when I turn down the offer. She didn't even want to say it directly. The thought of being betrothed by that disgusting man made her sick. You know why I hate those monsters you let into our family. Yet, you let them in anyway. Don't you have any trust in us? Of course I do. The Greyfia heiress stood, slamming her hands on the table to show her conviction in the statement. I'm sorry if I am not showing it. She said with a softer voice, I have the utmost faith in my servants, including you. But you have to understand how much pressure I'm under. This is the rest of my life we're talking about. Akino looked away. Seeing her master in pain hurt her more than she was willing to admit, even if she was angry at her. It's not like I don't understand. The raven-haired beauty whispered. Yahoo! Another tedious mission accomplished, Redhead-sama. Middle decided to enter the room at the worst time possible. Akino scowled at the girl's sudden occupancy and quickly made to leave the room, leaving a bewildered blonde behind her. What's Half-Blood's problem? Akino stopped short of the door, turning her head to the disgusting annoyance she forced herself to deal with to this point. Never call me that again. Akino bit out, her voice chilling. You may be less thankful to Bucko for letting your craven kind live if you do. With that completely unveiled threat said, she left the building. Scary. The deceptively innocent girl cooed tauntingly after the queen was gone. She flew to the ceiling, putting her hands behind her head in a carefree yawn. You really should learn to control your servants a bit better. And you should learn to control your tongue a bit better. Rias scowled. You will not provoke Akino any further, am I understood? Hi. Middle waved her hand in front her face. Sheesh, what's with all the animosity? I do a task for you and all I get is insults in return. You seem to have forgotten your place here already. Even though you are part of the peerage, you are not a part of our family. Middle snorted out a laugh. And who said we wanted to be? Middle said, crossing one leg over the other swinging her foot in uppity ebullience. She hummed to herself thoughtfully, though, being so alienated from my senpais, may cause me some grief over a bit of time. Middle tried holding it in, but it proved too much for her and she laughed again. an unpleasant, cruel sound that echoed in the almost empty room. Rias grit her teeth. Perhaps she would only keep the fallen angels around until after the raiding games. It sounded a bit too harsh at first, but these beings really were beyond redemption. She held little doubt in her mind that they had each done unspeakable things, and not just what they did to Asia. She really hated to communicate with such barbarous souls on a daily basis. Shoving all of that out of her head as violently as possible, she rested her head in one of her hands and stared out the window. Within moments, she gained a faraway look in her eyes. Is it really almost time, already? The girl wondered to herself. She let out a sigh. She needed a distraction, she decided. Getting up, she left the room, ignoring the still giggling loli that flew lazily above her. The blonde ceased her amused laughter and stared after the beauty below. You can leave, tell your friends they do not have to report here tonight. You'll each have the day off tomorrow. Middle blinked. An involuntary glower crossed her face, not only from the girl's aloof dismissal, but also from what the girl said. Friends? Middle asked harshly, more to herself than to the devil below her. That's rich. Rias paused in her steps for a second, then left. Middle's scowl deepened. TCH. She floated down onto a couch below, no respect from teenagers these days. She reigned in the peerless room, content with being left on her own. For about 20 seconds, arg, so bored. She crowed, rolling around on the couch, maybe I'll go annoy Cal-chan some more. Callow Warner sama, a chorus of voices yelled. The woman's eye twitched at yet another annoyance on her path out of this cesspool of adolescent idiocy. It was her first day, posing as one of the students with a light transformation. Her features were less sharp and womanlike, but her eyes still betrayed the cold soul she possessed. Though she looked more like a teenager, her eyes stayed the same, not losing their regular size or buoyancy, causing a lot of unwanted attention. She tilted her head downward to what must have been 20 guys all bowing to her, heads low. We are all humbled by your presence. A boy at the front, with short-cut hair that sat on his head like a miniature porcupine, screamed. Possibly the leader of this disgusting fan club. Please, you may ask us anything. We'll even lick your feet while you insult us if that is what you desire. Steam poured out of his nose and his cheeks reddened at the enticing prospect. She grimaced in distaste. Get away from me, you revolting scum, she uttered, flipping her hair over her shoulder as she walked past them. If anything, they seemed even more eager to serve her. She did her best to ignore the lustful stares that she could actually feel from behind her, before just sending them off with a glare of unfathomable wrath, forcing a wave of dark energy to cascade around her, like the silhouette of the devil itself. Even the horny teenagers, as obsessed as they were, knew to get the hell out of the girl's sight. They disbanded hastily. She sighed irritably. If this was what she would have to deal with in her everyday life as a third year, she wouldn't hold herself responsible for the deaths of all the pervs watching her. Yo, Callow Warner, right? She jumped slightly, startled. Turning quickly, she saw the blonde boy from the other night. She didn't even sense him. What do you want? She asked gruffly, not at all in the mood for conversing with the boy who got her into this mess in the first place. Well, I was wondering if you knew where Raineir is. Naruto said, scratching his cheek with an awkward grin. She raised an eyebrow. And why would you be interested in seeing Raineir-sama? He chuckled sheepishly. I was sorta hoping to break the ice, you know? And you two seem close, I guess. Her being all scared of me is weirding me out. He shook his head. Don't get me wrong. What you guys did to Asia-chan was seriously screwed up. But I'm willing to bury the hatchet if you guys want to, and I'm sure Asia-chan would as well. Callow Warner looked him up and down. Truly, Raineir-sama was the strongest out of all of them, yet she did seem frightened just by the sight of this foolish-looking boy. He was strong, she admitted, but nothing to be scared of. That is, unless Raineir-sama witnessed something that Donasek, Middle and she hadn't. The boy hadn't even used magic in the fight against them, after all. Perhaps he possessed something more than he let on. I doubt she would want to speak with you, you'll just waste your time. Callow Warner said, turning her full attention to him. Despite her better judgment, she was intrigued by the mysterious boy. What did he have that made even her superior wary? Whatever. He shrugged, I guess I'll just talk to her later. His eyes steeled. Oh, and also, if you try to do anything to Asia-chan again, I won't just leave it at a bruise to the head. Later. The boy waved casually and walked out the gate, leaving her behind. Asia wasn't joining the peerage, her faith preventing her, but the group of impure angels were at the school that she was attending. Naruto had to give at least a token warning, in case they got any ideas. Either way, he would protect her. Asia was with some new friends at the mall apparently, already becoming one of the more popular girls in school, as were the fallen angels who transferred. Well, Raineir, Midult and Callow Warner were, he wasn't really sure about Donaseek. Naruto decided to push all of that from his mind. He wanted to do something. Unconsciously, Callow Warner brought a hand to the side of her face where the bruise still resided as Naruto left. She scowled darkly. If that boy seriously thought he was above her from that one small bout, he had another thing coming. Raineir-sama must have just been overreacting. There was no way a boy so young could be more skilled than them. She started her trek to her peers' home, deciding to get out of the perimeters of school before another crowd of guys found their way in front of her. Callow Warner facepalmed in aggravation. What she wouldn't give to stab the infuriating munchkin that was middled in the face without having to fear any repercussions. She decided to save it for her dreams. Alright Kyubs, what news you got for me? I'll promise to tell you, if you never refer to me as Kyubs again. Deal. Naruto was currently at the hot springs located a few blocks from the school. He sat, shirtless with a towel around his waist, on top of the heated water, not seeing a problem with discretion with no one being there at the moment. He decided since he was in the most relaxing place he could think of, he would get a status report on what was going on from his furry friend. Don't call me your furry friend either, brat. Oh right, he could read his thoughts. Naruto scratched his head sheepishly. Sorry about that. Kyuubi let out a growl of irritation. Your chakra pathways are basically restored, thanks to me. Kurama informed his jailer, you can go wild with that cage bunshin jutsu, shadow clone technique, of yours. As well as the Rasengan, spiraling sphere. And any of your other advanced techniques. On top of that, due to you having your chakra back, you are able to access Sage mode safely. You'll be able to perform Biju mode within another week, once I re-establish our fractured connection. Kurama said, somewhat smugly. Hell yeah. Naruto fist pumped in his jubilance, so we have a shot of going back now? Frankly, no, the beast reported flatly. Naruto's smile dropped. What? Why? If you try to go through that dimensional transitway again, I'm not sure if I could fix you back up once you make it back, if I could even fix you at all. The Nine Tails admitted, it might have only been luck that got you through it in the first place, and perhaps there are unlimited realities that you could fall into. Either way, it is likely that if you make the trip again you'll be torn apart, leaving nothing of you left. Kurama said, much to Naruto's dramatically decreasing felicity. Oh, Naruto thought plainly, not really sure how to respond to the news. Don't worry about it too much, though. The tailed beast said, not really used to giving reassurance. In fact, he couldn't recall ever committing the act. Perhaps he was going soft. How am I supposed to not worry? He thought, running both of his hands through his wet hair violently, as if that would find him his answers. I might not ever get to see Sakura-chan again. Or Kakashi-sensei. Iruka-sensei. Granny Hokage. Hell, even Sasuke. They're all waiting for me, and I can't even get to them. Well, that's even if we're in the same time zones. Hundreds of years could have already passed in the elemental nations. Kyuubi informed instinctually. Gee, thanks for the comforting thought. Naruto sighed, his chakra dissipated from inside his body, allowing himself to submerge under the water he sat on top of. Already dead. It was a depressing thought. It really didn't leave him with much. If he was just able to get some kind of evidence that they were still out there, or get a clue as to how he could make another leap through space, then maybe it would take some of the weight off his shoulders. Sorry. The word sounded so alien, especially coming from that voice. Naruto's head emerged from the water a few seconds after going in. He leaned his head back on the wet concrete. Don't worry about it, he said aloud to the empty room. Or at least, he thought it was empty. Eek. A boy. Naruto blinked at the distinctly feminine voice. Tilting his head further back, he got a view of an upside-down girl. She had dark black pigtails, a childish face, large S, and currently had a towel draped over her important bits, Sona-tan tilde. There's a boy in here. You are in the wrong side of the hot springs, Oni-sama. An incredulous voice called from the dividing wall near Naruto. His sweat dropped when the girl in front of, behind him half glared, half pouted at him. Mode tilde. That doesn't change the fact that this pervert defiled my body. Only my cute emoto tan can do that to me tilde. She ran quickly out of the room, calling over her shoulder all the way back. You wait here, you scoundrel. Once I get my magical girl's outfit on, I'll deal with you. She promised. Naruto sat there for a few seconds in disbelieving silence before getting up, grabbing the drenched towel and putting it around his waist again. He shook his head to get some of the moisture out and get some of the spikiness back to his hair. That's my cue to leave, he said to himself, passing the girl who was rummaging through the lockers and mumbling something about her magical wand, silently. Maybe the hot springs weren't as relaxing as they used to be. He blamed his godfather. Before that old hermit went there, it was always a safe haven. Now it was just bothersome. He still needed time thinking, so he decided to go somewhere peaceful to get his thoughts together. He scratched his head, wondering distantly as he walked out, why the other girl's name was so familiar. Rias stared silently at the blue sky above her from the bed of grass under her. She sat in the shade of a tree in one of Kuo's biggest parks. So far, she hadn't found a distraction to the wedlock that kept making its way into the forefront of her mind. If only there were something she could. Whoa, hey. The girl in question blinked and looked around, unable to find the voice, up here. She could almost hear the amusement in the voice above. Turning her head skyward, she was met with the bright features of one, Naruto Uzumaki. Brilliant blue eyes stared back at her, his sun-kissed blonde hair and school uniform waving lightly in the gentle breeze. Rias shook off her shock of seeing one of the strangest people in her recent life sitting above her, using one of the branches as his own seat. Naruto-kun? The one and only, he said with no real energy, dropping down from his wooden seat next to her. He gave the girl a look. What are you doing here? He honestly didn't expect to meet anyone he knew outside of school again today. Just thinking, she said vacantly. She returned his look. What about you? What are you doing in the park? I'm doing the same thing, he responded, looking out to a group of kids playing their parents. He frowned. Must have been nice, friends and family. Hey Rias, have you ever felt, I dunno, trapped? Like no matter what you do, you can't get out of this situation you found yourself in? He looked her in the eyes. She seemed surprised by the question, but answered nonetheless. Yes, she answered honestly, put off by the uncannily similar thoughts the boy seemed to be sharing with her. Naruto looked at her face, finding no dishonesty. He didn't really expect any from her. The girl had been rather hospitable, even in the odd circumstances. His earlier views of her apparent benevolence clashed with what he had seen her do recently. She was able to make level-headed decisions, but she was willing to let innocent people die if it didn't line up what she wanted, like Asia-chan. Even if a war could have ensued. He also understood that he was under her care not because she wanted to hold him as a proverbial prisoner, but because she was obligated. But, again, it was annoying beyond belief, allowing her to believe she held anything over him. He could dispatch of her, and probably the entire club if he so desired. So it was irritating listening to their disbelief in his abilities. He wasn't sure if she deserved his patronage, in whatever she was caught up with at the moment, or if he should hold her somewhat cold decision of Asia's survival over her until he finally figured out a way to get back home. Yet, despite her coldness in the face of logic, or her annoying sense of obligation for watching over him, he couldn't bring himself to actually dislike the girl. Not to any serious degree. If anything, his attitude bordered on indifference, and even that was saying a bit much. No, he decided. He wouldn't coldly ignore her, that's something Sasuke would do. Or even Shikamaru after losing a game of shogi against his dad. Naruto sat down, his arms supporting him as he leaned back and looked at the emerald green hills that surrounded them both. A light breeze brushed past them, swaying the leaves in the tree above them, enhancing the pleasant atmosphere. He let out a breath of content. Oh well, you'll figure out a way. He gave her a grin. You're a smart girl. In the meantime, I have to figure out a way to get out of here. You wouldn't want me staying here forever, hey? He said lightly, getting up and dusting himself off. No. She turned away from him. Well, it's not like When she looked back he was gone, not even hearing her sentence. She felt a twinge of disappointment. His presence was really calming her down. An idea suddenly took hold in her mind. One that included her blonde friend. She hadn't thought of such a thing before. Her face scrunched up not only in thought, but also in doubt if she could really pull it off. She had self-respect, so it was a difficult prospect to wrap her mind around, but if she truly wanted the wedlock to become invalid, it might have been the only way. Raineir Fenix was a terrible individual, to be sure, but he and his peerage were strong. Stronger than her. It wasn't like he could just bully her into marrying him, but the guy was probably despicable enough to threaten her cute servants. Plus, it wasn't like going against her family was a better alternative. She steeled her mind. Her parents were past just the usual pressuring. They would act soon, so she had to act sooner. "What the hell are you doing in my apartment?" Naruto asked the bewildering man sitting on one of his couches. He had just gotten back to his 33rd floor apartment ROM and was ready for some downtime, when this guy appeared. "Well, I had something I wanted to tell you. You weren't in here, so I decided to let myself in. This is the room that I'm paying for, after all," Azazel reminded. Naruto shook his head in exasperation. "Fine, but you gotta get out of here by the time Asia-chan comes back. I don't want you anywhere near her." So hurtful. Azazel laughed, "But I wasn't planning on staying for long. I just thought I should inform you that the 4 great Satans want you in the underworld soon. They wish to have a meeting with you." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "Do you know why?" Azazel shook his head. "Negative, but if I were to guess, I'd say they want you to meet with Beelzebub for some evaluation." "Beelzebub? Who the hell is that?" Naruto asked, hands in pockets, now leaning against the head of the large couch Azazel sat at. Azazel shrugged. "The one who created the whole peace system that didn't work on you." Azazel pointed at the boy. He was understandably quite confused. "I believe he wishes to meet with you, as do the other Satans." Naruto clicked his tongue. "One thing after another, huh?" Naruto mused, glaring into the dark room surrounding him. "Don't be too mad though." Azazel said, "They'll be willing to pay you for the inconvenience, at least, that's what Searzek said." Naruto's eyes stayed narrowed. "Paying me off?" he asked darkly. "Geez, if you say anything like that it sounds bad. Take it as it is, it's the best time in your life to be rich, you know?" Azazel laughed, patting him on the shoulder. Naruto just let him. Naruto couldn't help but not take Rias' warning about Azazel to heart. It was hard to take him seriously when he was so damn Jiraiya-like. Plus, the man had been rather helpful, giving him all the information he asked for. The man might have been dangerous, but so was Rias' brother, and yet he felt as if he shouldn't shy away from that guy either. "I'll get out of your hair," Azazel said, getting up and making for the door. He gave a lazy wave as he shut the door behind him, leaving Naruto once again. The shinobi sighed as he dropped his empty bag down on the carpeted floor in the lounge room. He took off his shirt and crashed on the couch. The place may have been big, but the room was obviously designed for a couple, as there were no other bedrooms and only one bed. Naruto slept on the couch, it being comfy enough to sleep in, while Asia had the marshmallow soft king-size bed he had slept on previously. It wasn't a big deal. He was used to sleeping on the floor in the longer missions he had partaken in while he was an elemental, so the small downgrade meant little. 10 minutes passed before Naruto realized he couldn't sleep. Not until he knew that Asia was safe with him in here. He looked out the humongous window behind him to the city skyline. Seeing that it was still somewhat early, he rammed the back of his head into the pillow and sighed. "Maybe I should go for a run and jump around the high-rise buildings," he thought. That actually sounded awesome. A lot more fun than jumping through trees. He sat up and stretched out his legs. Before he could go grab something on, a pentagram of crimson energy erupted in front of him, sending his brain into defensive mode in less than a quarter of a second. Suddenly, Rias Gremory appeared, dressed in her school uniform, halting Naruto's reflexes of smashing a high-level ninjutsu where the girl stood. "Rias?" he asked, "What's up? Something wrong?" She didn't answer, her face still held its urgent expression. "Naruto-kun, please, sleep with me," she said, forcing Naruto to do a mental double take. "Huh? I've considered so many other options, but this is the only way." The girl began taking off her clothes, taking off the cape and shirt first. Naruto, still sitting, looked stunned and more than a little confused. Whoa, slow down there. What do you mean it's the only way? For what?" Throwing her first articles of clothing to the side of her, she was left only in a bra and panties, the rest of her body completely exposed. She put her knees next to his legs and wrapped her arms around his head, sitting on top of him. "I can't explain it to you right now." She leaned her face in front of his. He could make out the distinctly red cheeks she had at the moment, even in the darkened room. "You don't want me?" she asked, sounding almost anxious for his answer. Naruto's eyes unconsciously slid down her body, her barely clothed S pressing against his chest, her wide hips and creamy, mile-long legs draped over his own. He gulped. The girl was undoubtedly gorgeous. One of the, if not the, most beautiful girls he had ever seen. It's not that I don't, he admitted slowly, but this is a bit sudden. His self-control was waning, her scent making his mind go foggy. She adjusted herself and brought her hands behind her back. With a few practiced motions, the white bra she wore was removed. She brought her hands to her S and pushed it against her chest, keeping them covered for the moment. This is my first time, so I'm a little nervous, she admitted. Her right hand grabbed a hold of the bra, and she moved it away slowly, before letting it drop to the floor. Her S were now bare, staring back at him, S erect in the chilly room. Rias grabbed the side of Naruto's face, making Naruto look into her blue-green eyes. Is it yours, as well? He shook his head silently. She looked relieved. Good, I didn't want to take it from you if you didn't want to do it. She moved her face even closer, eyes half-lidded. Can you take the lead? She asked, timidly despite the aggressive starting. Naruto nodded without thinking, lust filling his hormone-filled mind. He brushed his hands lightly up her smooth legs, stomach, and finally ending their ascent to her S. He heard her breathing hitch slightly, obviously not used to such treatment. He alternated between rubbing the tips lightly between his fingers and circling around. Low moans escaped her mouth and her cheeks reddened further. His right hand drew down again, and he looped the side of the redhead's panties with his thumb, pulling down on the fabric slowly. He leaned his head down to the side of her neck. She shivered when his hot breath tickled her skin. The blonde kissed the girl's neck gently, lining up to her jawline while he pulled her last article of clothing down further. He stopped his kissing and nibbling to look into her eyes. The girl's chest heaved, her breathing becoming heavier due to the boy's surprisingly skilled ministrations. Without thinking, she moved her lips to his. Before their lips met, however, a blinding white light erupted. Rias looked surprised, her eyes drawn to the light, before she sighed. Naruto, meanwhile, growled at yet another person rudely teleporting into his place. I guess we were a tad too late. A sad smile stretched the corners of her mouth, a bitter-sweet expression overtaking the lust-filled gaze she had earlier. A woman, looking to be in her late 20s to early 30s, appeared within the room, her beautiful face emotionless. The woman had timber-wolf gray hair and the delicate features of a noble. She wore a maid outfit, which befuddled Naruto, only seeing such a thing in anime or fiction, and a large bust. She looked to him, then to the girl she came for. Attempting such a thing with this commoner? Master and Searsex-sama will be crestfallen. The woman intoned, her voice dim, yet somehow sweet. Naruto's eye twitched. Commoner? Greyfia-sama. Rias acknowledged. She stood up, looking indignant. What's wrong with giving it to someone like him? She asked heatedly. Also, she put her hands on her hips. I will not allow anyone to call someone I hold dear a commoner. Not even you. Greyfia stared back blankly. Finally, she knelt down to pick up the clothes Rias discarded in her attempt of rebellion. Regardless, you are the heiress apparent of the Greyfia family. She put Rias' school shirt on the girl's shoulders, covering her modesty just a little more. Act like it. The beautiful woman looked back to Naruto. How do you do? I am Greyfia Lucifuge, servant of the Greyfia family and queen of Searsex-sama's peerage. She bowed. Naruto scratched his head at the formality, silent until then. This was all really throwing him for a loop, but his head was back on the ground. Yo, Uzumaki Naruto. He pointed to himself. Nice to meet ya. Her eyes widened diminutively. She looked at Rias in question. So, he's the one. Rias nodded, getting rid of any doubts in Greyfia's mind. I see. She bowed again, lower this time. I apologize if I have offended you. It is an honor, Uzumaki-sama. I've heard much about you. Naruto shook his head. Naruto's fine. Greyfia didn't give any indication she heard the boy. I will come for you tomorrow, Uzumaki-sama. Searsex-sama has requested your presence. Of course, you may decline. Yeah, sure. But again, just Naruto. He stressed. She still didn't answer. Rias-sama, Greyfia said. Naruto was unable to distinguish whether it sounded demanding or not. The Greyfia heiress nodded. The girl quickly walked to Naruto and leaned her face closer to his, much like before, noses almost pressing together. Naruto's senses were overbeared with her feminine presence yet again. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I wasn't thinking straight." She kissed him on the cheek, her lips lingering for a second, before she removed them. "I'm sorry for bothering you." She smiled apologetically. "And no problem." Did he just stutter? He never stuttered, ever. Well, unless Sakura's threats of putting him through a wall were present. Thinking about the girl weighed on his heart a little bit, and looking into Rias' similar eyes didn't help. After a second of staring, Rias finally got up and stood next to Greyfia. The smile never left Rias' face, even when her body lit up next to Greyfia's own illuminated form. In a flash of light they were both gone, leaving a thoroughly discombobulated Naruto. What the hell was that about? He didn't receive an answer. Naruto rubbed his eyes tiredly, his hair messy and uneven with a bad case of bedhead. After the events of last night he didn't get much sleep at all. "Naruto-kun, are you feeling alright?" Asia asked, concerned. Naruto graced her with an exhausted smile. He didn't want to put her spirits down. The girl smiled back, bright as the sun, and nodded. "That's good," she said, happy he wasn't feeling bad. Her attitude suddenly took a complete turn, and the girl bunched her hands together in apprehension. Do you see anything different about me?" she asked, sliding some hair behind her ear instinctively, highlighting a hair decoration that rested in her golden hair and an azure blue ear piercing hanging from her earlobe. Naruto blinked. "Huh, you got an earring and a hair thingy." He noticed. "Looks good on you." He could have sworn her face actually physically glowed in her happiness. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she yelled in elation. Naruto's smile became a little more natural and he let out a chuckle, and he patted the girl's head. The girl crowed about how she had her first shopping trip with her new girlfriends while he petted her. He listened vacantly, mind more at just what had happened the other night. Why would Rias come onto him like that so suddenly? And why would it concern her brother or his peerage? He would ask the girl for answers. The duo made their way into class, sitting down at their desks. Naruto looked at the timetable he pulled from his pocket, taking his mind off of all that had happened. History, huh? He was down for that. History was one of the only cool subjects he had at school, right behind gym and shop class. Leaning back, he waited for the teacher. And waited. And waited. Murmurs filled the classroom as everyone wondered where the teacher was. The teacher is pretty old. Maybe he dropped dead, or something. Naruto mused. Just then, the door at the front of class slid open, drawing everyone's attention. The individual who walked through actually made Naruto smash his head into the desk. "Yo, sorry for being late, I got caught up in the hallways, quite the school you have." The man's smooth voice carried through the classroom, and he smirked. "I'm your new teacher, just call me Azazel." The smile he wore was positively devilish. Naruto sighed, walking from the courtyard to the occult research club room. He didn't do any work for Rias at all anymore, the novelty of it wearing thin quite fast, but he had to see the girl and ask her what was up. On his way there, he had to wonder about the nuances of his crazy new life. Why was almost everyone he knew attending this freaking school? Bar Rias' older brother, he had no other contacts that didn't go to Kuo Academy. Why did that weirdo Azazel even become a teacher? He seemed pretty well off already, what with spending small fortunes on goddamn alcohol. Naruto rubbed his temple and decided that conversation was for another time. At the moment, he had only one thing that was bugging him. "Are you feeling okay, Naruto-kun?" Naruto was shot with a sense of déjà vu at the question. Turning his head, he found Kiba looking at him, an inviting smile plastered on his face. "Just thinking about something," Naruto said, popping his neck. His joints were stiff, probably from the lack of sleep, he thought to himself. Naruto turned his eyes back to his fellow blonde. "Hey, Kiba, do you know what's been up with Rias?" Kiba shook his head. "I thought I was the only one that noticed, actually." Kiba said, "Though, I would think it's just some family-related business." Family-related business led to that? That sounded wrong in so many ways. Naruto's head snapped to the building in front of him. He sensed someone different, someone familiar. He brushed off the fact that his chakra sensing abilities were coming back to him after he heard a satisfied grunt from the inside of his head. He seriously had to thank the Kyuubi after this whole fiasco was cleared up. Kiba also seemed to sense the foreign presence, surprisingly. "I can't believe I noticed it only now," he said, his game face on immediately. They looked at each other and nodded, a silent agreement to go faster passing between them. Kiba and Naruto entered the clubroom within moments. Everyone seemed to be there. Donasek, Raineir, Middlet and Callow Warner were all in a group, cynical energy dripping from the side of the room they occupied. Half of the members of Fallen Angels sneered at his arrival. Akano was as far away from them as possible, making tea for Rias, who sat at her oak wood desk. Kaneko was reading on one of the couches, not even turning to look at them. The member of the room that surprised Naruto wasn't any of them though. It was the platinum-haired woman from the other night conversing with Rias. She turned to look at the newest arrivals. Same attire, same emotionless face, and same stare. Her hands were in front of her in a silent, respectable manner. Rias' cheeks gained an embarrassed glow when she saw Naruto's stare, last night still fresh in her mind. "Everyone's here," she said to herself, as well as the room. "Milady, should I be the one to tell them?" Greyfia asked. Rias raised her hand to the family servant. "That's unnecessary," she responded. She focused on the room. "The truth is," she began, not getting any further as a fiery light erupted in the middle of the room, close to Naruto and Kiba, forcing them to jump back. Naruto grabbed at his clothes and looked down at them once he landed. His facial expression soured when he saw the scorch marks that now adorned the side and back of his new school uniform. Now he was back to 0 usable uniforms. Fantastic. Kaneko put her book down, as did Akano with her tea, and they stood off to the side as the dangerously hot flames continued to lick the air around the middle of the room, consuming nearby oxygen greedily. Within the contained conflagration stood a tall man. As the fires died down, the individual looked to the roof. "Ah, it's been a while since I've been in the human realm," the man said wistfully. He turned, revealing the handsome features of a 20-something-year-old man. He had a half-sneer half-smirk as everyone stared at him. Lines ran down his eyes, reminding Naruto of Itachi. No, scratch that. Itachi didn't come off as a total douchebag. At least, he didn't during the war. But the man in front of him reeked of arrogant self-entitlement. "I've come here for you, Rias, my love," the man said, holding his hand out to Rias, who looked positively repulsed. Naruto looked at the stranger and Rias, then looked back at the stranger, before looking back at Rias again. "The hell?" was all that came to mind. What kind of entry was that? Once again, the pentagram teleporting thing turned out to be even more annoying than the Shunshin no Jutsu body flicker technique, being so loud and bright. But this was the first time Naruto actually wanted to punch the person that was the cause of it. Not only did he barely escape the torrent of flames with just some singed clothes, but the fact that the guy said that line with a straight face, and the way he said it, like he expected Rias to fall on her knees in awe, just hit Naruto in all the wrong ways. All this equated to a pissed-off Naruto Uzumaki. And nothing good came from a pissed-off Naruto Uzumaki. In the span of 5 seconds, this guy just climbed the ranks into his top 10 list of most dislikable people. And he had met a lot of heads in his ninja career. "Oi, asshole, you gonna pay for my clothes that you just ruined?" he asked, tugging at the black markings on the side of the expensive clothes. The man spared him a glance, and his eyes narrowed. "I hate bugs like you the most," he stated, looking at Naruto as if it hurt his eyes, a commoner who's too ignorant to know his place. Deciding he spent too much time on the trash in his sight, he brushed past the now, understandably, infuriated boy. "Number 4 so quickly. I dunno if I should applaud or beat the crap out of you." He was probably going to go for the latter. Naruto cracked his knuckles, smiling darkly at the man's broad back. "Riser, I will not allow you to talk to my servants in such a way," Rias said angrily, her eyes narrowed in a glare. The man smirked. Naruto blinked. So that was Riser, the guy that both Azazel and Rias talked about. Now, is that any way to talk to your fiancé, my beloved?" All of Naruto's thoughts came screeching to a halt. Fiancé? There was no way that meant the same thing here as it did back in the elemental nations. Why on earth would Rias get married to that guy? The other members all looked rather shocked as well, except for Greyfia, Akano and Rias herself. The girl's eyes narrowed further. "I told you last time, Riser, I will not marry you. Come now, my delicate flower." He brushed one of the girl's crimson locks behind her ear, causing her to swat the offending hand away. "Your family has its back to the wall. The underworld needs more pure blood, high-class devils. You know how rare they are." Are you really willing to be so selfish? He asked, his other hand going down her skirt. She moved back, removing his other hand. Leave now, Raineir. Neither you, nor my family can force me into such disgrace. She was suddenly pulled back by her arm, forcing her to come face to face with the man she despised the most in this world. I will not allow you to sully my honor. She scowled when he took her chin into his hand. I will bring you back to the underworld with me, even if I have to burn all of your servants to a crisp. His eyes glowed orange like fire, and Rias' own shifted to a dangerous red color. Naruto stepped forward but didn't have to intervene as Greyfia took control. Please calm down. They turned to look at the woman. Her gray eyes stared back at them blankly. Milady, Raineir-sama. I am here on behalf of Searsec-sama, so if conflict breaks out I will not stand idly by. She said seriously. Raineir took his hand away from Rias' face and brought his arms up, attempting to be placating. When it's you, the mightiest queen, saying that, even I am scared. His smirk betrayed what he said, but he understood her power nonetheless, so he stayed his hand. Greyfia nodded. He predicted this might happen. Greyfia's hands remained where they were, not even needing to lift a finger to intimidate them both. She still had both Raineir and Rias in her sights, ensuring no fight would happen while she was there. As such, I have been tasked to carry out a last resort if neither of you are able to reach an agreement. What are you proposing? Rias asked. If you insist on your position, a rating game will be used to settle the issue. If you accept, you will both be given 10 days to prepare. I accept, Rias said, not even needing to give the proposition thought. Raineir, I challenge you to a formal rating match. I don't see a problem with that, Raineir said, smirking, but, just to make sure, are these all of your servants? So what if they are? He laughed. With a snap of his fingers, another pentagram appeared, this time carrying over a large number of beautiful girls. Everyone's eyes widened, except Naruto's. Naruto was just trying to keep track of what was going on. He looked around the room to gauge everyone's reactions. Though Kiba, Akeno and Kaneko all looked rather shocked, the fallen angels all had different reactions. Raineir and Callow Warner both looked aggravated, both of their arms crossed and looking as if they wanted no part in anything. Middle was just staring at Raineir and smiling, swinging her legs from her spot on the windowsill. Donasek was also smiling, though, his smile was malevolent and challenging. Looking at the group of girls, Naruto's mind clicked. If he was correct, then this whole rating game thing was a showdown between peerages, and that was the bastards. Most likely fighting, or, at least hopefully. Naruto couldn't wait to knock that smirk off of Raineir's smug face. I have 15 servants myself. He informed, in other words. A whole set, Akeno said worryingly from beside Naruto. Correct, Raineir confirmed, the bright fires resting behind him, not seeming to burn any of the servants at all. So Rias-chan, are you sure you want to do this? Or are you going to be smart and prevent any hurt that will come to you and your servants? My servants are ready and I are ready for you, Raineir. She said without hesitation, glaring death at the man. Anyone who insulted her family, blood-related or otherwise, was going to feel her wrath. I swear that I will bring you down. I look forward to it, he said nonchalantly, walking over to his set. He wrapped his hand around one of the pieces' shoulder, the one with unbelievable sized S. Even by this world's standards, I'll see you soon, my love. He winked before him and his peerage burst into flame. When it dissipated they were all gone. Okay, so 10 days from now we get to kick that guy's ass? Naruto asked loudly, getting the attention of all occupants in the room. Even in the stiff atmosphere left from Raineir's departure, he managed to bring some smiles. I really hope you're not as moronic as you sound, Callow Warner said, spoiling Naruto's good mood. There's no way I'm going to compete in your devil's stupid game for such meaningless stakes. She crossed her arms under her impressive bust and scowled. Whether we win or not determines your freedom, Rias said, smiling inwardly at her plan. Each of the impure angels looked at her simultaneously, and she could have sworn she heard at least on neck crack. Freedom? Raineir asked suspiciously, surely you must be joking. Rias shook her head. If we win this, you are all free. And only if we win. Otherwise, you will have to stay with us for a little longer. Raineir actually cringed at the thought. I'm ready, Tilda, Middle screamed, volunteering eagerly. The rest agreed with silent nods. Alright sweet, let's do this. Naruto fist pumped. Uzumaki-sama, The boy looked and saw that it came from none other than Seer's ex-queen. She stared at him blandly. I'm afraid you are unable to take part in the upcoming games. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.